Hi, everybody. It's Bob Ost. This is Friday. It's I never remember the date. It's February 9th. There we go, February 9th. And this is our 195th consecutive weeks of doing TRU Community Gatherings. This is something that started April 17th, 2020, right after, like a month after shutdown started, when we're all scratching our heads and saying, what do I do? What is that really is a quarantine? What is going on? And basically somebody introduced me to Zoom. Hello, Zoom. And I was suggested that I maybe open up a Zoom room and bring people in on Fridays or at a time that everybody sort of decided on, and talk about what we were going through. Talk about what we're going through as it at least applied to theater, because the heart of everything we do here is create a theater community, and we talk about theater and we talk about different aspects of theater. Um, Hopefully, I get interesting guests every week. This is, like I said, 194th, 195th consecutive week of guests. If you want to come and be a part of the room and actually be here to meet the guests and hear the conversation live, and also maybe even ask questions and participate in the conversation, I can make that happen. Just email me at trunltd@aol.com. That's trunltd@aol.com. We'll happily invite you every week to come and have join in the conversations here. Next Friday, I'm actually going to have something different for us. I try to do something different every week, but something different. We're going to talk about documentary film. I have a friend and a member of the community named Susan Handman, who has won 10 local Emmys for a documentary series that she has created. So a lot of us in theater think about writing true stories and writing factual stories, and some have even sort of tiptoed into the documentary area or the docudrama area. So I thought it would be interesting to talk to Sue about what she does and how she does it. And how do you win 10 Emmys? That's what I really want to know. How do you win 10 Emmys? So join us next week for that. And I want to. We've talked about original cast albums before. In fact, I had Van Deen as a guest a while ago, and we knew him in many capacities. We knew Van as actually the first person in our true mentorship program. He was the first person that he inspired our entire program that we do now, in terms of teaching people about producing and having them learn producing on the job while producing a play reading, with the help and the assistance and the mentorship of a more experienced producer. In his case, his experienced producer was Cheryl Weisenfeld, a dear friend of ours. So I know him in that capacity. I know him for creating something once upon a time called Broadway Consortium, which was a kind of a new idea that he ran with, that something that not many or very many people have ever done. A consortium of investments, a portfolio of different shows to invest in. And then he's won a couple Tony Awards, and then he also opened up something called Broadway Records. And so the last time I was here, we were talking about Broadway Records, but now he's found something new. He's left Broadway Records behind, and I want you to meet Van Deen, who is now the founder and producer of Center Stage Records. What's the exact name? Center Stage Records. When I say
Center
records,
Stage Records, yes.
I say records, and it's like, no, wait a second, they're not records. So tell us, what did I leave out of your history? Did I fill them in pretty much? Talk about your
Yeah, I mean, that's a
your past a little.
Sure. Well, I've produced so far 13 shows on Broadway, 2 in the West End with a bunch more coming, also on Smash, which is upcoming, and done 6 national tours, and then with Broadway Records released nearly 300 recordings. Center Stage Records we launched about 4 weeks ago, and have already released 3 and recorded 1, and have many more in the works.
I already told everybody
several
about
dozen.
how to dance in Ohio. So tell us what what your new products are with Center Stage, and then let's talk about what's different about Center Stage from what you were doing with Broadway Records.
Yes, well, so the first one was How to Dance in Ohio, the first one we came out with, and then we did Salam by Steve Pasquale, where he's acoustic performance with John Pizzarelli. So it's called Some Other Time, voice and guitar. And then this weekend we have Mandela coming out, which was done at the Young Vic, recorded live, and that's of course about Nelson Mandela. And we recorded Gutenberg, the musical, a couple weeks ago, and very excited to get that one out as well. And never laughed so hard in the studio. Usually it's not a comic experience, but with the two of them, we were really enjoying every moment. So it was entertainment.
We can name
itself,
them Andrew Reynolds and Josh Gad. How do you say his last name? Gad?
Gad, yeah.
So egad. So let's talk a little theoretically. Let's start off with laying a foundation for all of this. What made you decide that you wanted to start recording, make original? Oh, by the way, Bruce Yecko is with us today. So
yes.
I don't know if you. So he's here. So
what
made you decide?
Recordings.
Say that again.
He's also very well versed in cast recordings.
I would say so, yes.
Yes.
But tell me what intrigued you about it? What made you decide you were producing shows and you were doing pretty well actually, and I think you won how many, 2 Tonys, Best Man and Porgy and Bess, or
no,
more?
Just one Tony, but a bunch of nominations, but just one Tony so far. But yeah, I'd actually studied music industry at college. I went to Syracuse University, but I studied a lot of things. I kind of created my own program. I studied music industry, musical theater, and music composition, orchestration, arrangement, production on the television and film side. Did take an audio recording class with Stanley Alton, who was kind of a legend there. And so had all the pieces to be able to do that. And when I was getting involved in producing musicals, I did Rooms, which I know you're familiar with, and it needed a cast recording, and I didn't know how to necessarily go to a label and have them do it. So I ended up working, with a production team, and we produced it ourselves, although we did do it through a label because I didn't have one yet then. So we did that through Time Life Music.
You're breaking up a little bit.
So I did a couple like that, but decided I wanted to do
Van,
more.
I think you disappeared. Oh, there you are. Okay.
I was saying just that I recorded Rooms with Time Life Music, and I did a couple of others, like How to Succeed with Daniel Radcliffe, worked on Fela, and decided I wanted to do more of them, but really wanted to call my own shots. And so when we conceived Broadway Records, and we were planning to do it spring of 2012, but then Bonnie and Clyde needed a cast recording. It ended up closing earlier than we all would have liked, and its cast album deal fell through. So we stepped up and said, okay, we're going to start the label 4 months early, so we can do this one. And so we ended up making that our first album, which still is one of our top selling albums under Broadway Records.
You know something, Van? I didn't realize that was the first one. I didn't actually realize that was the first one. I'm surprised. Okay.
It was, yeah.
Fun fact for you.
So it was a great way to start, though.
Fun fact. Natasha Diaz is in our third play in our True Reading series. Not this Sunday, but the Sunday after. So should I say hello to Natasha for you? Sure. Explain to everybody who Natasha is.
Well, she was the lead in Rooms when it was done out of town in DC and Rochester.
Rooms was very exciting for us. Well, everything that Van Dien did was very exciting for us. Saint Heaven was one of the first shows, if not the first show out of our True Voices reading series that actually got produced because of Van and Cheryl Weisenfeld to some degree. And then he followed it up. He was our star. He followed it up by producing Rooms, the musical off Broadway. So we were very, very proud of that. And those were happy memories for me. So
well, thank you. Likewise.
I love the fact that you do so much. You do so much well, and you do so much successfully.
Thank you
So
very much. Yeah, I mean, it all started with, Saint Heaven and Room. So, definitely grateful for those experiences. And with Room, we produced it during the market crash. So we had the unlucky timing of coming out then. So we were competing against Broadway shows that were reducing their prices to off-Broadway rates. So it was very hard. We still lasted over 80 performances, which was good considering, but we were competing against all these Broadway shows that cost the same as ours for the tickets because everyone was discounting heavily. And so it was really hard to compete with that. That was the reason the cast album was so important, is for the show to have a further life. And that
okay, so
kind of led to,
there's the first check mark, because basically one of the things that we want to cover here is why do we do original cast albums? And there are
yeah,
actually two sides of it. I would say there's the archival or historical side of it, and there's also the revenue streams for shows and how they contribute and help the success of shows. We also wanted, by the way, I'm going to give you a warning. We're going to probably talk about concept recordings as well, because I know you've been in those Murray fields and plowed
yes, we've done many.
those fields. So where do you want to start?
Um,
What are your thoughts in terms of the importance of original cast albums?
well, I think it's critically important. I know certainly that's how I came into musicals. I wasn't going to Broadway shows, as a kid. Didn't really have the means to do that, but certainly was able to listen to a lot of cast recordings. And in college, I had a professor, I did an independent study to write a musical, and he gave me a list of 100 classic musicals that I needed to hear. Most of them you all would have heard of, but there's some that you probably wouldn't have, because he gave some deep cuts in there too. But
Okay,
I really
okay,
learned.
you've thrown down the gauntlet. What are the ones that we've never heard of?
Well, one was the Bohemian Girl by William Michael Balfe, I want to say. I mean, this is 30 years ago now, almost. No, almost. So
You got me. I
trying to
don't
do
know
that from memory,
I
but
don't know
that was one of
Bohemian Girl. I don't know it. What else?
yeah, that one's pretty old, but from the 1800s. But I can't remember other ones that were. Well, I mean, it was some of you might have heard of, like Lady in the Dark and stuff like that. But
Oh yeah.
um,
Hey,
yeah,
I
but
grew up with I Had
the
a
average
Ball.
person might not know what that is.
I had a ball in Bajor.
Um,
So there's obscure
but
for
it
you.
ran the gamut. But so that certainly turned me on to the importance of cast recordings, and certainly how I came to discover theater and to become passionate about it and want to be involved. And it's even, when we were doing Matilda, I had a number of the Matildas who played it after the first cast, who told me that they listened to the cast recording that I helped produce and to do their auditions. So I mean, it inspired a lot of the future generations of Matildas and helped them with their auditions. And so it certainly affects all aspects of the business. But I'm sure most of the people who are in the business, it's because they discovered musicals via cast recordings. And so it's critically important, and certainly to know the canon and know what came before, and to learn the craft, and for the art form to continue. I think it's absolutely critical, because you can only get 1,000 and change attendees at a show every night, but there are millions of people who are passionate about theater. So cast albums is a key way that happens.
So you said earlier that the reason you moved into doing your own label was because you wanted to be more in control. What did that mean? What were the things that you weren't able to do that you found you could do once you were the guy that was producing the album? I want to ask you
Um,
that, and I'm also just thinking, keep this in your head too. I want to know whether your approach to recording a cast album is any different when you're recording someone else's show, or when you're recording something that is a show that you're producing, that you're involved in the production. Um, that seems like there
sure.
might be two separate things going on there, but let's talk. Let me hear it. Let
Well,
me hear it.
as far as, I mean, calling the own shots, I think that's really important, because there's so much material out there. And it's still something that I take very seriously, and it's not an easy process about deciding what gets recorded and what doesn't by us, because there's so much worthy material, and we can't do everything. And at the end of the day, running a label is also a business. I have to pay my employees, and You know, we have to pay our bills and try to return something for investors and projects and everything. So it's a bit of a balancing act, because on the one hand, I feel a responsibility to preserve that history and to make sure that, you know, things get preserved and get are available to everyone and the shows can live on. But it's also, again, balancing that with the business constraints as well. And certainly by being able to call the shots, at least I have more say over what does get recorded. And, you know, that was one of the reasons I started Center Stage Records, is because the last 4 years, Broadway Records was under different ownership. And now I have full flexibility and autonomy to record what I want to record again. So that was
okay. So this
that was
is
a key piece of it.
that's one thing that I want to jump in on, because you said it gives you the ability to pick the pieces that you actually want to record. So you have
Yes.
more say in that. Can you talk a little bit about the process of putting together an original cast recording? Let's talk about it from the producer's point of view, if you don't mind.
Me, the producer of the show.
Yeah, from the producer of the show, and
Um,
what are the disagreements that you might get involved in with if somebody else is the producer of the show that you're producing the CD for?
I mean, a lot of producers are, some are involved, others are more hands off, but they just want to see it happening. So it depends. I mean, certainly with How to Dance in Ohio, I worked very closely with Ben Holtzman and his team, and you know, P3 Productions are wonderful, and definitely ones to watch, and ones that I recommend, and anyone has a chance to work with them. They're among among most visionary and transparent and collaborative you know, producing teams that I've worked with. But they were very involved, and then there are others that just say, happy for you to do it. You know, you take care of everything, and then there's some, you know, of course, in between as well. So it varies, but certainly all producers want to see the cast recording happen, because that's how the show gets, you know, licensed. That's how, if it's fortunate enough to last longer in New York, that's how more people know about it and want to come see it. You know, it's in addition to word of mouth, of course, but it's the cast recording. You listening on Spotify or Apple Music or iTunes, or getting the CD is certainly a way that people discover it and either come see it or want to produce it once it's licensed. And so obviously, if you're producing a show,
I'm trying to push you towards like, a lot of people in the room are writers, but you know, TRU's a producing organization. So I'm trying to push you a little bit towards the response about what is the business model for I mean, I want you to tell us things like the budget, your commercial budget should include money for an original cast recording, or not. How do you think
you
about
mean like
this?
how much does it cost, or?
Well, how much does it cost? But also, where does the money come from? In many cases, don't producers build that budget into their commercial budget, or no? Is that a separate budget?
I wish they would, but they usually don't.
So it's a
You know,
separate budget,
I've
but
been
you know
trying
that
to,
even
yeah.
that, I'm trying to pull that out of you. I'm trying to find. I want people to get a little bit about the how to of it.
Yes, I've been trying to convince more and more to do that. It doesn't always happen that way, though. It usually doesn't, actually. So usually, it depends on the situation. Sometimes we help them raise it. Sometimes, you know, they have a, you know, group of their own investors who want to kick in. It may often be overlapping with the same show investors, but it's usually not coming from the show budget, although sometimes a piece does. Very rarely does the whole thing come from the show budget, but it does happen on occasion. So, but again, I think it is something that should be built into the budget, but recognizing that shows are costing more and more every day. I mean, the average musical is 20 to 25 million now, which is scary, but it's the reality. And so I understand that it's hard to put in another 250 to 400,000 in the budget for that, and that is the approximate range that most, you know, Broadway cast recordings cost.
But to go back to something else that you said, the original cast albums becomes a great tool for selling the show and for getting interested in the show. So
yes,
isn't it a good business idea to build the original cast album? I mean, we're talking about musicals, of course, but
yes,
it would be a good idea for people to build that into their commercial budget.
it would be, yes. Again, you know, that they're not always thinking about that. They're just trying to get their show up, trying to make sure they have a substantial reserve, you know, that they have their marketing budget. And this should, in theory, be part of the marketing budget, but again, it doesn't always work out that way. But that would be ideal.
And I think that I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but I think you did a Jekyll and Hyde concept album that eventually became
Yes.
a revival of the show.
Yes.
So talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about different aspects of the original cast recordings, different uses of them. So Andrew Lloyd Webber started this. He started it with
Yes.
Joseph, I guess.
And
But
Jesus
talk
Christ
about that.
Superstar.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that was a different time too, where albums like that could sell millions of copies, which was, kind of the heyday of the concept recording. But um, back then, if you hit it right, it could do extremely well. And there's certainly others um, like Aida that did a very successful concept recording. Um, and certainly Frank Wildhorn did a few, like you said, Jekyll and Hyde, and Scarlet Pimpernel had one. I think Civil War had one. So he had done a few quite successfully as well.
Were you
Now
involved?
it's
You were involved in
what's
the
that?
Jekyll and Hyde. Were you involved in any of the others?
I was involved in the later Jekyll and Hyde,
Yeah.
uh, with Constantine and Deborah Cox. Somebody just asked about Tommy. That was different though, because that was more of like a rock opera that wasn't necessarily intended to be staged at the time when they wrote it. It was like a rock opus, and of course a film as well. Later became a musical. So I don't know if I would call that a concept recording, although it led obviously to the show, but I don't know if it was originally intended to be a musical. So it was more like just a concept album from a
So
rock and roll perspective. But it's
so
certainly
one
in
of
that world.
so one of the things that's kind of taken a little bit of the punch out of it, I think, is the internet. I had Joe Iconis as a guest last year or year and a half ago, and he actually didn't have a lot of people mistakenly think there was a concept album of uh, chill
Be more chill.
chill be more chill. Yeah, I knew it wasn't called Chill Pill. Be More Chill. What it was, where he had recorded tracks of it and he had put them on YouTube, and one of them, Michael in the Bathroom, I think it was, it just got a huge amount of play, and it really did help him get his show into production and get it ultimately to Broadway. Um, so the cast album is in maybe is the effectiveness of it is do you think it's being weakened by the fact that there's so much content available on YouTube and or throughout the internet?
Um, Not necessarily, but I mean, Be More Chill and Six, I think, are two recent examples of concept recordings that, really propelled the shows forward. And Six, I mean, that concept album has done extremely well also, just like Be More Chill did. The So I think that's been helpful. Obviously, there are bootleg recordings or like 54 Below recordings, live performances, all that I think helps, but I don't think it takes away from the concept recording. I think still having the whole thing makes a difference. I know when we release EPs, which is say 4 to 6 songs, it's not nearly as effective as when we release a whole concept album. So I think people do like to dive in deeper, at least in our experience.
Well, I guess
So
they want to have a sense of the whole show. I
yeah,
mean, that would be my take on it. You don't necessarily know what the show's about from hearing three to six songs. I mean, I remember. I have to say that the promo tracks for Hairspray with the three songs that it grabbed me, but I certainly had no idea what the show was from the three tracks. So yeah, I think we all kind of like to see the whole score because it gives us a sense. It should be telling the story.
yes, absolutely.
Um, so um, Ross, are there any questions that we should put in here, or do you want to? Should I just continue my conversation with Van?
Yeah, we got one. How do you release your albums? Any hard media or just streaming platforms? Oh, sorry, we got two. That's the first one though.
Yes, well, we use, I mean, we're actually moving distributors now, but we're moving to the Orchard, which is where we were under Broadway Records, but we had to reset up under Center Stage Records. And they can get to over 200 digital retailers worldwide. Obviously, we all know the main ones like Spotify and Apple Music and iTunes, Tidal, etc. But there are literally hundreds around the world, so they can get it to pretty much all of them. And we do CDs and vinyl when it makes sense. We used to, 5+ years ago, release everything on CD, but now we've learned that that doesn't, necessarily make sense. It only makes sense if there's a show running or if there's a clear demand for physical media, then we'll do it. But otherwise, they tend to be digital only. It's only if it's a Broadway production or off-Broadway production that's currently running, then we'll definitely do CDs. So it just depends on the situation. But a lot of people don't even have CD players anymore, unfortunately. So there's a much smaller market for that than there used to be. I mean, CDs right now are probably less than 25% of our business, whereas it used to be almost all of it when we started.
Okay, cool.
Next, Ross.
Yes.
I'm going to come back to some of my questions though, but yeah, I noticed that there were some questions that came up while we were talking.
Yes. Related, do you monetize by producing the recording for the production or by royalties from sales/streams?
The latter, royalties from sales/streams. Certainly there are, roles we can, help out, but we usually subcontract a lot of the actual, mixing engineers, recording engineers. That's not us. That we do too many to be able to do all that ourselves, but so we can subcontract people to do a lot of that work. But we do all the design, packaging, administration, the business side of it, the creative oversight, but we're not doing necessarily the technical work other than getting the masters uploaded and things like that. But we don't get deep into the recording process, although I do oversee it and sit with them during the recording session if it's one that we're involved at that level. There's some that I've been involved more than others, like Matilda and Color Purple and Carolina Change, and some of the others I've been more involved, and then some others, less. It just depends on the situation and who's already attached to it and what their roles are.
RK Green has a question.
Yes. Congrats on launching Center Stage. I heard that Six created its cast album from the opening night performance on Broadway. Are there economic benefits to recording before it's in a full production?
Yes, and also, I mean, what Six did was unusual in part because it cost a lot more to record it live, especially in New York. London actually doesn't cost much more, but because of the union restrictions with stagehand unions and all the different unions that come into play, it's probably a good $100,000 more to do a recording live versus in the studio. And I prefer in the studio most of the time because you can control things more. You can get a more pristine sound. You can do multiple takes if you need to. You have better miking because when you're, in the theater, you're miking it for performance, but it's a different, art form when you're trying to do it for recording. Plus, the actors are moving around, there's choreography, and they're not focused just on their vocals. So it's just a different result. But as far as so you were asking about having it before opening. I mean, the earlier you have it, of course, the better in terms of, the more people you can reach with it, the more you can help the awareness of the show. The issue is that typically you're not ready artistically to record before opening night because you're still working on the show. It's not frozen until, a few days before opening or during late previews and the press period. Plus the cast is working really hard. They're rehearsing the day, doing the show at night. So it's a lot to ask them to then go in the studio as well. So usually most, probably 98% of cast recordings, if not more, are recorded after opening for that reason, for all those reasons, I should say. It's very rare. Like I did work on Hello Dolly, and that was done beforehand because, I mean, it was a revival. They knew what the show was, and they did extra rehearsals and everything so they could do it. But it did cost a lot more, and it was a lot harder logistically to make that work. So it's not an easy thing to pull off to do it too early on.
I have a question for you. Are there ever artistic decisions that need to be made when you transfer a show into a recording where things may need to be a little different, or is it always just exactly what you see on the stage?
No, it's a very good question. Gutenberg is the perfect example because for those of you who've seen it, you know that the premise is it's two old friends who have written a show about Gutenberg. They've rented out a Broadway theater and they're doing a reading and wearing all the hats literally and playing all the roles themselves. And you know, at the end, you know, producer comes from the audience and gives them a Broadway contract and all that. That you know, that is very specific to the theater, and you can't do that exactly the same on recording. You know, I mean, I guess in theory you could, but it makes a lot less sense. So that the team actually rewrote the script a little bit to make it that the guys were doing a recording to try to get the attention of a producer, you know, a cast album. And at the end, you know, a producer next door is recording another cast recording and happens to hear them and wants to give them a contract. So it's a different take on it. Not a huge change, but definitely recognizing the medium that it's in. And you know, it's a lot of fun that the way they approached it. Also, of course, you have to condense things and you have to make it make sense as a listening experience, because when you're in the theater, you're seeing it, you know, and you've got other cues to what's happening. And in recording, you need to make it work as a standalone, you know, just audio experience. And so the way you cut it and the way you shape it, you know, are important. On occasion, like I know in Anastasia, Stephen made some changes, Stephen Flaherty, to how certain songs ended and certain, you know, cuts here and there, and just things that he did musically to make it work more as a recording. So he definitely made some adjustments, and it depends on the show and on the writers too about how much they want to change it. So changes usually aren't drastic, but there's definitely some alterations and variations. And then the other extreme is like Carolina Change, where we literally recorded everything, the way you see it in the theater, basically. And that's actually the only cast recording, interestingly, we've ever. Well, actually, I should say there's two we did this way, but that's the only one initially that we did all the way straight through in the recording session, because usually you create a schedule where you jumble the songs in an order that makes sense so that you don't have any cast member there too long over their union, you know, maximums, and you make it work for their voice. So they have, you know, their vocals are best done in the afternoon because they're not a morning person, whatever. You know, you try to work the schedules around everybody so that you get the best results. In the case of Carolina Change, I think we had 53 songs to record, and it just would have been too difficult to do it out of order. So we literally just ran the show twice and then went back and did any little fixes we needed to do. And that's how we recorded it. And it's a double album, so it's a massive amount of music. So
I have a question
an
for you.
interesting way to do it, but
how are these decisions made? I mean, is this where it comes in where you say that you have more control, or do you have to have careful conversations with producers? Do producers understand what you're trying to explain to us, or do they sometimes not understand it, and you have to have long sessions where you have to convince them that this is the best way to go?
Well, believe it or not, the producers usually don't get super involved in those decisions. I mean, sometimes they can. Certainly Matilda, you know, worked closely with the producer and the director about, for example, what we're going to do about having 4 Matildas. Because any night you go see the show, you're seeing one. But I knew from prior experience on other albums, you know, that I wasn't associated with, but felt bad that one person was left out and they just chose one, when it was, especially when it's a child actor. And so I said, you know, going in, I really want it to be all 4. Let's find a way to make that work. And so I worked with the producers and, you know, Matthew Warchus and the writers, and we figured out, okay, you know, how should we structure the 4 Matildas so we can include them all? And we played to each of their strengths. Like if one was a stronger actor, one was a stronger singer, whatever it may be, you know, we played to their strengths. And, you know, the director was deeply involved in that decision too, as were the writers. So that was one where the producers did get a little more involved, and they agreed with me that we should include all 4 Matildas and work together to figure it out. But oftentimes the producers leave it to the writers and us to figure out, you know, how we're going to structure it. And we also have project manager, you know, that, or really production manager that we hire on most of the bigger projects, that is in charge of scheduling and budget. So she works on figuring out how best to structure it and split it up and you know, to work out the puzzle so that all the pieces work in terms of what's recorded when, like I was describing earlier.
Yeah, it is kind of a nightmare of scheduling when you have a lot, especially with a large cast, and trying to fit everybody's schedule into that. So Kevin Purcell wants to know where do you record? I mean, I assume that you record in New York. Well, you may not record in New York. You may record in Connecticut or I don't know. Where do you record?
Mostly in New York. Power Station, which is now owned by Berkeley, is our number one place that we go to.
Was it, say it again?
We also go to Power Station, which is owned by Berkeley College.
Okay.
They bought it a few years ago and renovated it, but it was independent before that. But they did our whole community a huge favor, because if we lost that venue, that would have been very bad for cast recordings. So they saved it and made it part of their school, but kept it as a commercial studio. And it's been a tremendous blessing to all of us. There's also the Demena Center, which is more open. Like Power Station, you do more separation. Demena is a little bit more open, but that's another place. We recorded Assassins there and a few others. So those are the two main ones for the larger recordings, and then there's a bunch of smaller studios we can do really small recordings at, but those are our two main ones.
Well, when you with Broadway Records, I think we're all aware of the fact that there were definitely original cast recordings, but you also did a lot of recordings of personalities, people doing their shows, or just, doing a recording of songs. I think you did a bunch of Patti LuPone. I think I
Yes.
assume you've done Kelly O'Hara. You've probably done most people in theater. So how does that segment of your business compare to the original cast albums?
It varies. I mean, like you said, we have worked with Patti 3 times and have something else we're talking to her about. We've done a fair number of solo albums. They don't always do as well as cast recordings, so we have to be strategic about it. But they're a really important part of what we do as well. And it's primarily artists that have some association with Broadway. In fact, really all. There has to be some connection that makes sense for it to make sense for us to do it, to be the right place for it.
What was I was going to ask you something. As if somebody came to you, what would you need for them to have in place if they came to you and they wanted to do a recording of their show with you? Will you do that anymore? Do you do that anymore? Or if somebody has any kind of album that they want to produce, and they come to you and say, can we do this with you? Is that part of your business plan or no?
It is, but admittedly, you know, we have by circumstances, we have to be a lot more selective.
Say that again. I keep losing your Wi-Fi.
Sorry. I was saying we had to be a lot more selective than we have been in the past, because there's just too much out there to be able to do everything. But we do accept, you know, unsolicited, submissions, but, you know, just there's criteria. I mean, obviously there's the quality of the piece, there's the commercial viability, there's the time involved, there's what else we have on our plate. You know, if we have a hole in our schedule, then that's to their advantage. And if we're jam-packed, then it might be harder to take something on, which obviously is not something they would know or be able to control. But I mean, we're happy to listen to stuff, and we can't make any promises, but we have released a number of things over the years that came to us through our website. That's the way most people get to us. So
if somebody comes to you with a project, are you going to be? Are you the distributor? I mean, if they record it with you, you're the distributor. Or yes, or
yeah,
no?
we're the label, and we handle distribution, all that. But yes, we're the label. And I think somebody was asking how to submit it. If you go to centerstagerecords.com, which is also the same as broadwayrecords.com, because we still administer the website for both, and they're housed together. But there's a contact, section on there where you can send an inquiry. Usually I would ask for like a, description of the show, who wrote it, who's involved, and, a link to hear it on Dropbox or something like that. That's usually what we'd be looking for. And obviously if they haven't recorded yet, then it may just be demos, which is fine too. Usually concert recordings do come funded, so it would be extraordinarily rare that we would be able to provide funding for that, because they just don't usually make a lot of money. So it is usually not a business model where we can actually finance them. So usually they come to us to release it, but it's very rare that we'd be able to help finance it. Broadway recordings we do, invest in, and certain recordings where we think we could actually make a return on our investment, then
you invest in them, but the producer is still coming to you with 6 figures to do that, to do a recording. basically what kind of investment do you make with an original cast recording?
With Broadway,
Yeah.
I mean, it ranges from 25 to 100 or more, but oftentimes, if I really believe in the project, I'll help them raise the money too. I mean, there's been a bunch where I raised all the money, but we didn't put it all in ourselves.
Particularly if it's
there's
something
different ways
that
to do
you're
it.
excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds analytical, but I have 12 years of data now from all the, stuff we've done in the past. And there's other resources where you can see how other shows do. So you have to kind of analyze and say, what are the chances that this will recoup the investment? Obviously, no one has a crystal ball, so you never know for sure, but we make our best assessment to determine if we can put investors' money or our own, company money into it.
Interesting. I never even thought about the fact that you actually put an investment into some of these. I guess that'll also would change what the payback what the royalty deal would be with the show. You would be sharing it if you're putting money in because you'd be one of the investors. So the budget, though, I would assume is made by the producer. They come to you with the budget. Do you ever review budgets with people and say, I don't think we can do that. You need to raise more money or.
Actually, we do the budgets with our, our production manager. The shows usually, that's not their bread and butter, and that's not necessarily where their experience is. I mean, their GM may certainly weigh in and help us determine some of the contractual obligations that there might be, and what the orchestrator should be paid and stuff like that, and obviously what the cast is making. But we're ultimately the ones who review the union rules and figure out where it actually falls, and figures out what the budget is.
So that's all the more reason why producers don't necessarily include the budget in their commercial budget. So it's basically two different sets of investors. The people that are investing in the show itself may not be investing in the original cast recording, although they probably are given the option of doing so if they want to.
Yeah, so, in many cases, not all, but yeah.
I'm just trying to disembag, pull the strings out and find out what the different aspects of the business model is for something like this. If one of us are out here with a show that we want to do a cast album for. So that was new to me. The fact that you actually invest in some of the pieces that you do, that's amazing. I think that Maureen has a question, but let me see.
Yes, she does.
It's a awfully long question. Maybe Maureen could just ask it more simply. Or no?
Right. Do you want me to ask it now?
Yeah, ask it simply because it's a long.
Okay. I have a cast. It's not a cast album. It's an album of demos that have been developed over many years, but it's got the whole show in it. Is that something that I can use to market, or it doesn't have the homogeneous sound that an album that was done with one band would have?
I mean, certainly something you can use for promotional purposes. It would be hard to release it commercially for two reasons. One, because as you said, it doesn't necessarily have a homogeneous sound, but more importantly, if everyone who worked on it thought they were recording a demo, you can't suddenly switch it to a commercial recording unless you go back to all of them and say, okay, we're going to release this and we're going to pay you X to do that. And you work it out with all of them. And then you could have that option. The other thing that people should keep in mind too, is that while the label obviously is an option, it can be very helpful. I mean, with tools today, websites like TuneCore and DistroKid, you can release it yourself and get it to Spotify and iTunes and other places. While we're, I think, an important piece of the puzzle and we bring a lot of value to the table, it's not like if we can't do it, you can't release it. I mean, there are other ways to do it. You don't get the value added of a label, but you can still get it out in the world. So that is always an option. But like I said, if it's a true demo, then you definitely want to put a polished commercial foot forward if you're charging for it, or if you're putting it on commercial platforms. But if you're just sharing with investors or prospective creative, the creative team members or whatever, you can of course share demos anytime.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Maureen, basically a demo is a demo. I mean, basically what you're describing is a demo. I mean, and we all use them to market our shows. I mean, to send to producers and send to people that might be interested in the show, and they're invaluable for that, of course.
Absolutely.
To go back to Joe Iconis, I swear he told me that he didn't get all that internet play from a concept album. I think he said it was just demos, but
No,
maybe
the
maybe
actual
I'm wrong.
album did. I mean, last time I checked, which was a long time ago, it had like 300 million streams, but I think it's well beyond that by now. But the original, and it wasn't a concert recording technically, because he did a production at Two Rivers Theater in New Jersey, and it was a cast album for that. So it's rare to have a regional theater cast recording, but it does happen on occasion. So that's essentially what it was, not really a concept recording. But that, at least that's my understanding. But that is the one that did hundreds of millions and maybe even more than that by now of streams, which led to the off-Broadway production, which led to the Broadway production.
I think that he said, and I hope I'm not misquoting him. I can go check the YouTube. We actually have it posted on YouTube if anybody wants to go look at the conversation with Joey Canis. He said that there was a little one thing that you have to be aware of if you're doing a concept album is that once the show is produced, there becomes a little bit of a conversation that has to be said about producing another album of the same show.
Yes.
So have you ever gone through a situation where you've done a concept album, the show has been produced in a production, and now the production wants to have the concept album, and there's some question about whether the audience is still going to be there because they know it from the concept album. Help me here.
It varies. I mean, it depends how big the concept album was. I mean, so in the case of Be More Chiller 6, they had a more daunting task because those original albums were so successful. But if it's a concept recording that just got, a few tens of thousands of streams or whatever, and wasn't a massive success like those were, then I think it's less of an issue. And if, depending on the situation, you always have the option of taking the concept album down and just having the new album, if that's something that the team feels is required in the situation. But it really depends, because the concept album is really a snapshot in time, and obviously shows keep evolving, and so whatever the concept recording was is probably going to be a bit different than what the cast recording is, the official cast recording. And it's a matter of if they're happy with what the concept recording was enough to keep it out there, or if they want to replace it, or any of those things are options.
Ross, you want to continue with the questions from the room?
Sure. Yes. Let's see. Would it make sense?
Yeah, I was going to say Kate McLeod's.
Wait, that was Wait, you're talking.
Yeah, I'm going to say Kate McLeod's question seems related to what we just talked about with Maureen, but
Okay.
Maybe she means something different.
We already answered how do we submit. But yeah, okay, if she means something different.
So Kate, I guess my question to you is, when you say do a trailer type sample of songs from the show to build an audience, how do you distinguish that from a demo or a concept album?
I guess it's a concept.
Does she mean to submit to someone like me?
Yeah, I mean, is it the same if you did a sample of songs from your musical, like a trailer that you watch for a movie? Is that different than a concept album, and would that make sense to do, like phrases?
Well, that wouldn't be a commercial thing. That would just be a promotional tool, which you can certainly do. But that's not something you can sell or put on Spotify. But that's something you can certainly use to promote your show on YouTube or wherever you have it. But it's a different format.
It's a different album. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Back to you, Ross.
Let me see. Oh yeah, another one. Does that mean you recommend doing both a commercial concept album and a cast recording release? Or can you explain what you mean by concept album release?
Yes. Honestly, I think it depends on the situation. We have this discussion all the time. Part of it depends on the timing. Like if you have the score in a really strong place and you think it's a major asset to sell the show and you're trying to get to the next step, that's a good time to do a concept recording. But if you're about to have your show open in 9 months and you can do a cast album then, probably not a real reason to do a concept recording. Maybe you do a couple of songs as promo tracks, you know, just to get it out there. But I would not do a concept recording if your actual official production is imminent. It's more if you're using it for a tool to get people to hear it and get people excited about it. And you know that the actual official cast recording is at least a few years away. That's the time to consider it. But otherwise, if you're doing them too close together, you're wasting your time and money, most likely, doing a concept recording, in my view, if it's, you know, within a year or less.
Does that answer the question? Whose question was that? I forget.
I think Lisa's.
Oh, it's mine, Lise. Yeah. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
Yeah, except that I'm trying to understand the timing, like concept album, it's not the same cast, obviously, at all.
Well,
So,
it doesn't have to be, no.
right, so
Yeah.
does that mean that you can basically use, say, your demo, but then just more fully develop your demo as a concept album? Do you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to understand that part.
Well,
Well,
let's talk
usually
about that. Let's talk about that for a
Yeah.
second. That's actually an interesting broader question.
Yes.
Can you talk about the difference between a concept album and a demo?
Yeah. A concept album is usually a studio cast that you put together, and if they're not part of an actual production, they're just recording your songs so that you have a demonstration of what they are, and you can, you know, still sell it, and you polish them so that it sounds like a finished recording. Usually a concept recording is not, you know, the composer singing all the songs. I wouldn't really call that a concept recording. The one exception to that is when Sarah Bareilles, at least the one I can think of right now, is when Sarah Bareilles did her songs from Waitress before the cast recording. That was essentially serving the purpose of a concept recording, but she's also a major star that I think would garner a lot of interest because she was singing it. It was her work. I think, you know, just to have a Broadway composer or aspiring Broadway composer record themselves singing all the songs isn't really concept recording by normal, you know, definition. It's assembling a cast together in the studio. They don't have to all record at the same time. You can do it over the course of weeks or months or whatever, but it's usually casting different people to play the different roles. Occasionally there have been some concept recordings where I think like Aida and Civil War, where they actually have, you know, had rock stars or pop stars each do a song, and it wasn't even the same person singing the same role throughout, and that is still a concept recording. These days, more often, it's usually the same person singing the same role, but not always. Like we did Little Black Book, where they had a different person playing Heidi Fleiss in every song, and it was still a concept recording. So it can work that way, but it's usually certainly not demos. It's usually polished and most likely varied cast, and you don't have to cast it as if you were casting the show, meaning you don't have to be age appropriate or even gender appropriate or whatever. You can do whatever you want, whatever serves the purpose of getting the songs across. So you can put in your dream cast, even if it's a cast that would never come together, you know, either because of schedules or because they're not the right fit for a cast recording or for a full production. But you can assemble a dream cast if you want, you know, for a concept recording, because it's just an audio experience, and what matters is what you're getting across orally, and not, you know, if it's the right cast to play the roles in a theatrical production.
Yeah, that's what I did with my show, Everybody's Getting Into the Act. I have Mary Testa, Nancy Opal, Robert Cuccioli, Emily Skinner, not Alice working on this one, Rebecca Luker and Danny Burstein. I mean, I basically cast every song with a star, and it wouldn't be done that way at all in the show, but at least it gives a very good idea of what the songs are like, and
Absolutely.
it sold CDs because it was an all-star cast. I've been using it as a tool to try to get a production, and I gotta just admit that I haven't gotten the production yet. I'm still trying to. So it doesn't always happen easily. The other thing to bear in mind with a demo versus concept album versus original cast recording is time and money that you put into it. A
Yes.
demo, you're not expected to put in. A lot of it has to do with how much time you spend in the mix and the mastering. you will be meticulous if you're spending like $250,000 or $300,000 on your cast recording. You're going to be meticulous and you're going to get everything absolutely perfect. When you're doing a concept album, you'll try to get it close to perfect, or you'll do it as much as you'll work on it until the money runs out, is basically what'll happen. And then when you're doing a demo, you just do what you can afford to do. It's different levels of production.
Yes.
For my concept album, I had full orchestra. We had live instruments and everything. And for my demos, it's just piano, drums, and whatever I can get on the synthesizer. So I think you just have to think, and it's just different levels of detail and production that you're talking about. Anyone else? Blair? And Van, is there anything else that you wanted to say about that? Did I sort of jumped in?
No, that was good. I mean, concept recordings, of course, cost far less than official cast recordings, in part because of union requirements, and in part, because they're only there, a day, and it's or even a few hours, and so it's a different experience. But concept recording can be anywhere from like $5,000 to $50,000 or more, depending on how far you go with it. Whereas a cast recording, like I said before, off Broadway, I would say on the really low end is 40, but probably, these days average is like 80 to 100, something like that, for an off Broadway. And then Broadway, typically between say 250 and 450, but just depending on the size of the orchestra. And the orchestrations are usually the biggest expense because you have to pay what's called a reuse fee. So whatever you paid for the Broadway production is pretty much what you have to pay again for the album, minus whatever you don't use. So if you cut, underscoring, dance music, whatever, then you don't have to pay for that, but you still have to pay for what you do use.
That's what I've been looking for. That's the kind of stuff I was looking for. That's good to know. That's something I don't think a lot of people, I know I didn't really think about that, the reuse fee for orchestrations. Hugely important though. Are you, can you put your, well, actually, why don't you say how do people contact you, or through the website?
Well, the website, there's a contact page on the website, and I get those directly. So if you just go to centerstagerecords.com, there's a contact page there that you can send an email, and just in the subject, you can mention my name or whatever, but it all comes to me anyway, to me and to people who work for me, but I get copies of all of it.
Larry Daggett, how come you don't have any questions? Where are you? Larry Daggett, are you there? Yeah, you're there.
He just put one in the chat, Bob.
Oh, did he?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I was saying that. Okay. If we make a concept album, how do you suggest we try to get listeners interested in the material? Oh, good luck there. Posting it on YouTube and TikTok, anyplace else? Go for it. Best guess.
Yeah. I mean, that's the hard part, of course. It's obviously we put it in the press and social media. Casting it with buzzy names helps. I mean, and it's not just who is the biggest household name. It can be who has a bigger following on Spotify or Instagram, or especially if they'll help promote it. Those are factors. I mean, obviously you want to cast it with the people who write for the roles, at least for the purpose of recording. They don't have to, visually fit the role, but as long as they can sing the role the way you want it to be. But keeping in mind, I mean, these days, there's a lot of TikTok stars within the theater community and beyond that have real followings, and certainly like Bridgerton the musical was a significant success because of the way they managed their TikTok following and letting people into the process. So, if you can find ways to let people in your process, and that can be very helpful. But TikTok, when used right, can be very powerful. So on the Instagram these days, it's more about visual content than just like pictures. So try to get video from the recording sessions, or if you do a concert of the from the album or from the show, after, try to get some footage that you can share. But video footage is always really important to have, even if it doesn't have to be professionally shot and edited. You know, sometimes it's better if it's not, because it feels more like fly on the wall. But having that kind of content is helpful. You know, again, who's on it is helpful. If it's somebody like, for example, an Aaron Tveit, Jeremy Jordan, you know, anytime they're on something, that tends to get a lot of people interested. And it could just be what their Spotify listens are. Like if it's somebody who's on a major category on Hamilton or something, and then they're on your album, you know, Spotify algorithms may say, okay, you listened to Hamilton, now go listen to this concept recording because that same person's on it. So thinking strategically about that type of stuff too can be helpful.
And to answer Maureen Condon, does the word demo simply imply a simple vocal piano? I've been using the word demo for fully orchestrated recordings. The demo is it's anything that you can afford to do. Basically, most of us do piano and vocal, and sometimes you know, drums, and sometimes bass. I mean, I think my demos, I usually use piano plus something, but again, it's what you can afford to do. You do what you can do. You can do a really fine demo with just piano and voice. It doesn't have to be more than that.
Really, what defines the difference is the level of quality and like preciseness. So if it feels like something that's commercially releasable, that does have more of an orchestration of some sort, then it tends to be more towards concept recording. But it's also in a business term, because if you paid people to do a demo, you can't release it commercially unless you give them a bump or you work it out with them. You need to have the rights from your performers to release it commercially, because if they went into something thinking it was a demo, maybe they didn't put their put as much prep time in, or they thought it was more casual, they weren't getting paid very much, so they didn't give 100% in terms of preparation and all that. So it may not be something they want out in the world for potentially millions of people to hear. So you can't just suddenly release it on them. They need to be, given permission. So it's better if you know something's going to be released commercially to tell them that up front. If you make the decision later, like you do a demo and you say, oh, this is actually better than I thought, it is commercially releasable, then you really need to go back to the performers and say, hey, we really actually want to release this commercially. Can we work out a deal to do that? And it probably means signing something and just giving a little extra money and getting their permission, of course.
I recorded a demo with somebody once, and somebody I was asked to put it on to, I don't remember where I was supposed to send it, and I went back and asked him for permission. He was thrilled. He actually didn't ask for more money. So everything's a negotiation in this business and in this world.
Yes.
Something else I saw. Oh, Ross, do me a favor and ask Larry's second question, just so we can hear the voice of God again.
Okay, let me find it.
647.
Gotcha. Another question. I believe you said you recoup past album production costs through streaming. If an album costs typically between $250 and $400,000,
no, 250 to 400,000.
250,000, yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a broad. How many streams on Spotify and Apple, etc., would it take to make that money back?
And where were the survivors buried? Never mind.
It takes a lot. I mean, it's like between 3 and 4/10 of a cent per stream, and it's a song is a stream. So I mean, if you can do the math, you can figure what that means. But it's often in the hundreds of millions. But that's of streams. I mean, it's usually a combination of that: downloads, CDs, vinyl, whatever it may be. So it's hard to recoup just on streaming. It can happen. I mean, Anastasia did really well for Broadway Records and streaming, and so did Lightning Thief and Matilda.
Lightning Thief, good. Arcade's
yeah,
happy to hear
really
that.
Well. Yep, and so it's it does take a lot. I mean, certainly Be More Chill and 6 that we talked about earlier, did very well in streaming, and Dear Evan Hansen and Hamilton and many others. But I mean, it does take a lot, usually hundreds of millions to recoup that kind of budget. So But as I said, it's more typically a combination of that and other formats together that can do it. But honestly, most cast recordings don't recoup. We're very strategic about the ones that we pick that we're going to invest in. Well, we're a little less picky about which ones release from Broadway because we feel they all should be preserved. But we are more picky about which ones we'll put money into because we analyze it to see if we think we'll get our money back at least. We're not always expecting to make a profit, but at least if we can make back our investment, then we can take the risk.
Well, I think we're gonna wind up for now. I'm good. I've kept you here 10 minutes. Well, I've kept you here longer. So we've actually had at least a full hour conversation. Thank you for staying. I don't know if you want to hang out a little bit with us afterwards, but I'm going to go into speaker view, and I'm going to go just say thank you to Van Dien, and also wish you the best with Center Stage Records. I hope it's phenomenally successful, and I also hope that it's serving a great purpose for us in our business, because we want our shows to live on, and the only way a lot of shows can live on is through cast recordings, and they matter. It's historical. I think that what I was saying earlier about it being a revenue stream for producers is probably not as much of an issue as it used to be. I think at one time it was considered a real revenue stream. I think from what you've said, Van, it sounds like it's a pretty limited stream. It's maybe a revenue trickle.
Yeah. Well, especially when you have a $20 million show, unless the album does really well, is when you spread that pro rata amongst all the investors, whatever comes through, it's not a lot. Of course, you have something like Hamilton that's made tens of millions of dollars, many tens of millions. That's different, but most of the time, even if it does really well, there gets diluted so much amongst the investors that none of them are getting a whole lot from that. And that's on the show side. On the album side, it's more direct because it's much smaller. I mean, if it's a $250K to $400,000, and you have a $25K or $50K piece, that's significant. Whereas if you're on the show and you have a $25 or $50K piece of the show and it's a $20 million show and you got to divide that out by whatever the show is getting from the album, that's a much smaller piece.
Thank you for that. That's more business stuff that I wanted to get in here, so I appreciate that. And I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank my community. Let's see, how many of you are still here? Still got 26 of you, so thanks all 26 of you, and also the ones that had to leave, for being part of the TRU community and for coming here. Many of you every week, like Eric Sirota, who's been here just about every week for 195 consecutive weeks. I want to also thank everybody out there who stumbles upon us on YouTube or on our podcast. Thank you for finding us. I hope that you find us interesting. I hope you'll stick with us and look for more recordings, or look at the other 150 recordings on YouTube that are there for you to watch if you want. We do this all as a community service, and we've done it since COVID shut down, for like a pay what you can. And we're going to continue doing it as pay what you can. That means anybody who wants to come be with us can be here, and you don't have to pay anything. If you can pay something, thus the pay if you can, the can something would be really appreciated. We always need support. We're a business. We're not for profit, but it's a business, and we have salaries to pay, we have expenses to pay. So whatever you can do to help us out, I appreciate. You can go to trudonate.com. That's TRUdonate.com, and make a little donation. Or you can come to these things, these weekly gatherings, and pay. I think the least we ask you to pay is $8, or you can pay more. You can give a donation to us, or you can join as a member. You can join as a member of TRU. Look us up on truonline.org, truonline.org. Check us out, see if there's anything we're doing that might be useful for you, and be part of us and be part of our community. That's it. Hopefully I'll see some of you, if not all of you, next week.